Hello, welcome to my studio. This is your instructor Linda, and this is video workshop number 6 on Copenhagens, reverse Copenhagens, and alternate side looping. If you have not watched my previous videos, I do recommend that you go back and watch them first, as my videos are easiest to understand if they are watched in sequence. So let's begin this class by bringing back a term that we've covered in a previous class, which is the term anchor. In the wheat ears class, the anchor on the comb was this number 1 pin here at the end of the comb, and every loop that we made to grow the wheat ear always returned to the anchor. In the Copenhagen, reverse Copenhagen, and alternate side looping, the anchor is not at the end of the comb on the number 1 pin as it is with the wheat ear. So today we're actually going to flip the comb over to the other side and use the other numbering system. So let's quickly take a look at this numbering system. The first thing you'll notice is that there is a target in the very center of the comb, which represents the number 0 pin. And there are numbers in increasing size as you go towards the end on both the left and the right side of the comb, or up and down, depending on how you hold your comb. So in the Copenhagen and reverse Copenhagen, as well as the alternate side quilling, we are going to start by attaching our paper to the anchor pin at the number 0 position here. So as in the previous classes, let's begin by drawing a looping diagram for the Copenhagen and for the reverse Copenhagen. I am going to be doing both the Copenhagen and the reverse Copenhagen at the same time, as they are essentially the same element, with the crucial difference being the final folding step that's done at the very end of the element. So let's draw in our diagram. Let's start with the anchor pin at the 0 position here, and let's draw the pins on the top of the comb and the pins on the bottom of the comb. And let's number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so also for ease of reference, I am also going to designate the pins on the top as being plus and the pins on the bottom being minus. Okay, so reverse Copenhagen. Just like the sprig, we will go through the first loop by going through the anchor pin and the first pin that we're looping at. So in this case, there's number 0 and number 1. And we are going to be looping around the number 1 pin and returning to the anchor. Now, one of the very distinct things about Copenhagens and reverse Copenhagens is that they are mirrored on the left and the right side and the top and the bottom side of your comb. So essentially, whatever you're doing on one side of the anchor is mirrored on the other side of the anchor. So let's go down here and let's loop between the 0 pin and the 1 pin and loop around the 1 pin to go back to the anchor. So when we swing over to the other side, we're going to go between the 1 and the 2 pin and loop around the number 2 pin. And we will repeat the same thing on the negative side, looping back to the positive side around the number 3 pin. So it creates this kind of bow tie look, right? So now the very important thing when you're looping around in the Copenhagen is that the loop should always go in on the side that is closer to the anchor and then swing around the pin on the side that is further away from the anchor. Let me show you what I mean. So here are the pins. If you loop from, say we're going to loop around this pin here. So if you loop from the inside here, then you can loop around that pin this way. Now let's suppose that we're trying to loop around this pin here, but we go the opposite direction and we loop on the side further away from the anchor. Then what you'll notice here is when you try to loop back to go around that pin, is you'll be obstructed by this piece of paper here. So whenever you're looping Copenhagens, reverse Copenhagens, or alternate side quilling, you do always want to go around that pin by going through the gap that is closest to the anchor, and then loop around going around the gap furthest away from the anchor. Okay? So let's begin. Let's do it on this comb here. So if you've watched my previous videos, you probably already know the different ways to which we can make a loop which is used to attach to the anchor pin. So I've got a loop here that I've previously made, and if you don't remember how to do it, you can certainly go back to my other video on the wheat ear and review it. Okay, so here we go, and I've just realized that I put the loop in the wrong way for the direction that I'm normally quilling. So again, pay attention to that. Always make sure that the direction, whether it's a P or a Q shaped when you're sliding it onto the comb, corresponds to the direction in which you will be looping. So I normally loop to the positive side or the plus side first and then towards me, in which case then I would slide it on the comb in a P position. Okay, so let's slide it onto the comb. So we're going to go around this number 1 pin by going through the gap between the number 1 and the 0 pin. We'll loop around the number 1 pin to the back side to the anchor. So similar to the wheat ear, whenever we get back to the anchor, we do need to affix the paper to the anchor point. Now there is a way to do it without having to glue onto the anchor, which I will be covering later in the class, and the specific situations that that technique is used. But for now, for this, let's do glue at every pass at the anchor. Now what's really important is I am applying the glue directly from the bottle because I do have a small nozzled glue bottle. If you do not have a very fine point glue applicator, do make sure to use the stylus and your glue pad as covered in the previous videos. But for the sake of speed and ease of demonstration when I'm doing this class, I'm going to go directly from the bottle. So here we go. Make sure the blob that you use is very small, otherwise you will end up with way too much glue at the anchor and you will have an element that is a big mess. So what number should I loop this to? Got it up to number 4. Let's loop it up to number 6 and then we'll stop at that number. Okay. Number 5. So when I'm doing Copenhagens, or even wheat ears for that matter, on quilling comb, I do tend to prefer to use the longer quilling paper, as that avoids having to connect the papers too many times. So just like the wheat ear, in the Copenhagen, you always want to attach additional pieces of paper one at a time to make sure that the connection point is never on the tip of the comb where you are looping around that pin. Otherwise, you'll get an element that has a glue mark and may kink, and it won't look as nice. So here we go. As you can see, this paper doesn't quite make it around that pin, so rather than attaching the paper to the end, I am going to trim it, right? Because we always want to attach the paper and glue within that bottom quarter of the paper on either direction of the anchor pin. Okay. Let's grab a second sheet of paper and let's attach. There we go. One, two, three, 4, 5. Good. So we're going to continue looping. We're going around pin number 6. And I have some extra paper here, so I'm going to go all the way to 8. Okay, so now my paper, will it go around the second 8? Yes, it will. Awesome. Here we go. So then what we're going to do is we're going to trim that last bit there, and we're going to affix that to the end. There we go. So this is the basic quilling element and the first start for the Copenhagen and the reverse Copenhagen. Let me see if I can pull that to the tip of the comb so that you can see the pattern. Looks corresponding like that. So let's go. All right, so here we go. There's the anchor pin right there, and we've got loops on the left and the right side. So if we go on to the other side and we take a look at the pattern of the paper when it's looping over the combs, we will notice that there are symmetrical loops or bumps on here, and it doesn't look like we've accidentally wrapped around 2 needles or skipped a needle at all. Okay, so now the Copenhagen and the reverse Copenhagen varies now starting from this step. So the first thing you have to do is you have to remove your element off of the quilling comb. Unlike the wheat ear, where you could just slide it off with the comb, you do not want to do that with the Copenhagen. So you want to go in with the Copenhagen and grab at the anchor pin with your tweezer right there and slide it off. Do not let go of your tweezer. If you do, the element will spring open and you may have a difficult time folding it. Okay, so now fortunately in this case we've glued around every pass along this anchor point here. So even if I do let this go, it probably won't explode. In some of the other glueless methods, if I try to do that, your whole element would probably fall apart. Okay, so here we have the element. It kind of looks like a fan a little bit, I guess. So with your tweezer still in the element, we are going to fold the element. And when we fold it this way, so it looks like that, you get a Copenhagen, which is one of these elements right here. Now, if we take this and we fold it the other way so that it comes up kind of like a leaf, like that, then this way is the reverse Copenhagen, which is one of these. All right, so there we go. So let's do that again, except this time we are going to loop a little bit differently. And we are going to make our loops kind of further apart by skipping pins. So let's draw in our pins. There's the anchor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's the plus, here's the minus. Okay, so in the previous loop, what we did was we went every single pin. We went 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. So we're going to do it this time by skipping the center pins, which is the 1 and the 1 here. And we're going to go directly to 2. Now you can also go directly to 3. It depends on how much of a skip you want on the base of your quilling element. So if we take a look at this reverse Copenhagen versus this reverse Copenhagen, the difference is between this one and this one is I started at the number 1 pin on this Copenhagen. You can see the element being folded right there, and I went up. In this element, I skipped the center pins and I went directly to the number 2 and the number 3 pin. Now, why would you want to do this in a Copenhagen or a reverse Copenhagen? Well, when you fold your paper here and you have lots of paper at this anchor point, then the anchor point becomes very thick and very bulky. So if you're doing a quilling element that requires the center to be a little bit more compact and less bulky, then you can skip the center pins as appropriate. So this one here, you can see the first element loop starts here, and on this one, the first element loop starts here. So if we were to do that on the diagram, we will go from the anchor pin, which is where it's attached, and we're going to loop around the number 2 pin. So if we're looping between the 2 pin, remember we loop on the gap side that is closest to the anchor, and we swing around and go around the number 2 pin right there on the side that is furthest from the anchor. So here we go. And then from this point on, we can loop as normal. We'll go around the 3 like such. Okay. So then that'll give you a Copenhagen or a reverse Copenhagen that has less bulk here. It'll be easier to fold, and the point when you fold it will be a little bit sharper. Now, one of the things that I would like you to note, because one of my students did it, is if you're making an quilling element with the Copenhagen and you have glued at every pass going to the anchor, you do want to make sure that you fold that element, if it needs to be folded, in a timely manner. The reason why being is if you allow the element to dry for too long, the glue here will become very hard, and it'll be very hard for you to fold your element to get that nice sharp point. So if you are not ready to fold and form your Copenhagen or reverse Copenhagen, then simply make sure that it's a project where the element will continue to be straight, or use a glueless method, which I will be teaching later. Okay, so let's do another variation of Copenhagen and reverse Copenhagen. And we're going to do it by making the loops different sizes. Now you can have the density of the loop more dense or less dense by simply switching the comb that you use. If you use a narrow spacing comb, then you will get kind of more compact, dense loops. If you use a larger comb, then of course the loops will be further spaced out. And if you want to loop it so that they're even further spaced out, then you can simply skip needles. So usually when I do Copenhagens, unless it's for a very, very teeny tiny project, I do tend to prefer to use the larger comb over the smaller comb. And the reason why is because the smaller comb has very slender teeth. And when you're pulling the Copenhagen, if you pull really hard and you've got a slender comb, then you'll get very flattened quilling elements, like this one, for example. So it's very skinny because I looped it around a smaller needle and I tugged quite hard. So if you want your Copenhagens to have big fluffy loops like this, then the best thing to do is when you're pulling the paper around the needle, not to tug too hard. Relaxed, keep it a very relaxed grip. You want a looser quilling hand. If you want your quilling element to be very, very skinny and you want the loops to be very sharp, then you can tug a little bit harder, use a harder quilling hand, a tighter quilling hand, and you'll get the skinnier loops. If you find that you're a very tight hand and no matter what you do, your Copenhagens look extremely flat, then unfortunately the only way around that is to make your quilling elements on the quilling board, where the adapter will help you adjust the size or the fluffiness of the loop. Okay, so the Copenhagen is pretty basic. We can vary it by skipping combs, or we can make it denser by using a finer comb. But essentially the loop is always mirrored front and back, up and down from the anchor point. So now I'm going to do the Copenhagen again and the reverse Copenhagen again, except I'm going to show you two glueless methods to which you can make the Copenhagens, which will make it more time efficient for you and a little bit easier to loop. So let's begin with the first one by quilling the Copenhagen like this one here, and then doing the glueless method. So when I say glueless method, it's not actually a truly glueless method. It's a method where you're gluing only at the end. So the first type is free like this, and the second type requires a border or a trim around your element. So let's start with this one. So here we go. Okay, so there. And let's make the attachment loop like such. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My goodness, someone's racing a car outside on my street. Okay, so let's go slide this on, and this time I'm going to go, let's try that again. I'm going to go, okay, this is not cooperating with me. Just a sec, I'm going to re-glue this. And glue it the other way using a fold instead of the needle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So hopefully it should work this time. Okay, on to our needle. Okay, so number 1. There we go, that's better. Number 2. 2 on the other side. 3. 3 on the other side. So you'll notice in this example that I'm not gluing every pass as I go. And I'm going to do the gluing at the very end. This way is certainly much faster and much easier. However, there are some restrictions to its usage, which I will go through in just a minute here. Okay, so I've got all the way to the end. So like the other Copenhagen, let's remove it off of the comb. Okay, so here is the start of our element. And let's make this one into a Copenhagen. So we're going to fold it this way. So in the Copenhagen, the loops are facing each other, kind of like alligator teeth. In the reverse Copenhagen, the paper is folded the other way so that the loops are facing away from each other, and it looks kind of like a leaf. Okay, so here we have our Copenhagen. However, if I release this, it will explode and the element will fall apart. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to do a cheating method. I'm going to grab one of these quilling clamps here. I'm going to clamp the base, and then I'm going to take the glue and I'm going to apply it here on the base. Now, if you do it this way, one side of your quilling element will have a glue mark on it because you've glued on the anchor. So this is very useful in a project where you're going to be flipping the element to the other side and affixing it to a surface. And when you do that, the side that you've glued with this big blob will be hidden anyways. So if you do it this way, it can save you a tremendous amount of time. And very handy if you have these little quilling clamps around to help you keep it together when it's drying. Okay, so I'm going to put that to the side. So now I'm going to show you a different method, which is glueless as well, or rather you glue at the very end. And that is to use a border or a trim, which holds the whole element together. So here is the Copenhagen, here is the reverse Copenhagen. Now this one, the Copenhagen, I am going to quill on the comb and then show you how to do it with the wrapped glueless method at the end. Okay. Now, I'm also going to show you a technique to affix your paper onto the comb without using a gluing loop or a loop which you use to slide on the comb. Some of my advanced and intermediate students are able to do this. If you are not, don't worry about it. Just make the loop, slide it onto the anchor. Okay, so I'm going to tuck this paper under the anchor pin here, and I'm going to hold it with my finger so that the paper doesn't move. And then I'm going to take the paper and slide it to the back side. Oh, I'm having a bad day today. The paper broke. Hold on. Okay, let's do this again. Okay, so we're going to hold the paper to the bottom of the comb using a finger. Then we're going to loop the paper right there. We're going to switch our grip so that we are gripping the top, and this little piece will just be hanging there. Okay. Without letting go of the comb, we are going to loop around the number 1 pin, again going from the side that is closest to the anchor and looping around the pin at the side that is furthest away from the anchor. So now if I've done this properly, it will tuck that piece of paper that I left as a tail, hiding underneath this anchor pin. Now if I do the loops a couple of times on the alternate side of the comb, then what you'll notice is that the paper will more or less affix itself, right? And once you've got a couple of loops in there, then the anchor doesn't have to be held anymore, right? So there we go. All right. So in the glueless method, when we're doing the Copenhagen, at the end, we want to leave some of the paper hanging like this. If you don't have enough paper, attach another piece. Okay, so let's remove this off of the quilling comb. So here we go, we've got the element. So we're going to do this one Copenhagen. So we're going to pinch it so that it has the loops facing each other like teeth. So here's the important part. Do not let go of the anchor. If you let go at the anchor, everything will unravel. So in order to affix this and to put a border on it, we are going to take this piece of paper that you've left over at the end, and we're going to loop it around the entire element, right? Like that. Okay. So if you hold the element through the top and the bottom in this pinching grip here, you can loosen or tighten the wrap according to what you want in your element. If you want a fatter element, then you can loosen the paper by sliding it like so. You can pull the paper and make a skinnier element. Once you're satisfied with how the element looks, then you can glue down the anchor piece right there. Now it's very important when you're doing this to have a grip that is neither too relaxed, which will make your element unravel because you lose grip of it, or making it so tight or pinching so hard that you can't slide the paper. Now, the amount of tension and the grip will be something that you'll kind of have to practice and get to know by feeling the paper underneath your fingers. There we go. All right, so let's glue. So here we have the Copenhagen with it trimmed like that. So at this point, you can move your loop on the element around. If you find that your quilling element is tilted to one side, you can kind of fiddle with it till the element is completely straight like that. Now what you'll notice on this one is I did an uneven number of loops on the left and the right comb. So on this one here, you can see each one has a corresponding size. This one here has one longer than the other at the end. And that indicates to me when I was looping, I looped 1, 2, 3, 4 pins on this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pins on that side. Now in this case, when I did this, this was just simply my error. However, you can deliberately make it so that the element is a little bit asymmetrical like that. It's particularly nice in elements where you are pinching the top to get a little point. Okay. So now I'm going to do a reverse Copenhagen with the wrapping. That's this one here. So in the reverse Copenhagen wrap, you actually don't want to wrap using the paper hanging at the end. So when you get to the anchor on the very final point, you glue it down and you trim off the excess. So what do you use to wrap a reverse Copenhagen? Well, it's still the paper, except the difference here is if you're doing a reverse Copenhagen, you need to leave extra paper at the anchor point. Let me show you what I mean. So in this case, I'm going to grab a longer strip of paper, just because for this video I don't want to spend the time gluing. So I'm going to use a longer piece of paper here. Okay, so in the reverse Copenhagen right there, you want to leave extra paper at the anchor point, like that. And this will be the part that you will use to wrap or trim your reverse Copenhagen. So let's begin the loop. You do have to hold down this paper there so that it doesn't slide. So here we go around the number 1 pins and number 2. Usually after you get to about the second or third loop on your pins, it's usually enough to hold this piece of paper in place without sliding. So at that point you can let go of the paper and continue your looping. So here we go, number 4 on this side, number 5 on this side, 6, 6, let's go number 7. And you'll notice as you grow the Copenhagen, the bigger it gets, the more paper it uses. So one sheet of paper may get you to pin number 4 or number 5, for example, but to get to pin number 8, you'll probably have to use 3 strips of paper of equal length. Okay, so on this extra long piece of paper here, I managed to make it all the way to pin number 10 on this side, but only pin on number 9 on that side. So I'm going to undo this so that it goes to the number 9 pin on both sides. Okay, and then I'm going to cut off the excess here. Okay, so if you want it tidier and you don't want this center loop to pop, you can glue it down to your anchor at this point. However, if you want to do it without gluing that last bit there, then that certainly works as well too, because the paper that is wrapping your project will hold the entire piece together. So, but in this demonstration, I'm going to glue it down so it doesn't flop about. So here is your Copenhagen. We've got the same number of loops on this side and on that side, and it looks symmetrical. Doesn't look like we've missed any pins or anything. Okay, good, perfect. So I'm going to slide this to the edge of my comb, then I'm going to grab my tweezer, and I'm going to grab the entire element by grabbing it at the anchor point. So very important, don't let go of your tweezer. It will spring open. So here we've got the element there. So in the reverse Copenhagen, we are bending the paper so that the teeth are facing away from each other, like a leaf. Okay? So at this point in time, when you remove it off your tweezer, again, do not let go of this anchor. If you let go of this anchor, everything will fall to pieces. And if you're trying to quill and this keeps happening, I do recommend gluing at every pass to affix the loops so that they don't move about. Okay, so then what we're going to do is this little piece that was left over, we left it at the beginning, is going to be wrapping around the element like such. And when you're wrapping around the element, it's always very important to always have at least one place where you're gripping the element. If you have no place that's gripping the element again will fall apart. So here I am, I'm going to loop around the element, and with this hand I'm going to grab the anchor so that I can tuck the paper underneath at the anchor. So here I am at the anchor again, okay, right? So then I'm going to grip the paper from the top and bottom, and again I can choose to tighten, or I can choose to loosen to get a fatter element, like that. See? Pull, skinnier, relax, fatter. Okay? So I'm going to pull this skinnier, and what you'll notice is when I did this that the pattern kind of tilted to one side. And that's because when I pull the paper, there's different tensions on this side versus this side of the element. This is not a big deal. You can just nudge it back so that it's in the center. Okay, and once you're happy with the look of your element in terms of its width, then you can affix down the end of the paper. So I like how that looks. So here we go. Let's snip off the excess and glue it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so here's your element, and that wrapping that you did on the element is actually what keeps the whole thing apart together, and there is no glue in the center here. So to get this pointy leaf from this round leaf is very easy. Grip it and pinch. And there we have it. So a reverse Copenhagen leaf with wrapping. Okay, so I'm going to take a brief break to get myself a glass of water, and then we will begin in part 2 again.